Okay, 6.7, 11:30 a.m., public
you, Director Harder.
hearing. Consideration of ordinance amending Chapter 5 of Lake County Code and adopting by reference appendixes C and J of the 2022 California Building Code, Part 2 of the California Code of Regulations, Title 24. And we have Community Development Director Turner. Welcome.
Thank you. Mireya Turner, Community Development Director. I also have our Chief Building Official, Bill Collins, to answer the techie questions that you might have. The item you have before you today is a draft ordinance adding Appendices C and J to the building code updates that the board did this past March. Building code updates are done on a regular basis, about every 3 years, and we use these new codes as our standards when we're evaluating development. We inadvertently omitted C and J from this update, and so we're bringing them to you today to just sort of close that gap. Appendix C regulates our agricultural structures, and Appendix J helps regulate with grading. So I will turn it over to Bill if you have any
Questions? We have Supervisor Green.
Thank you. I know we're just doing housekeeping and getting it adopted, but there was a comment made earlier this morning about ag exempt. So on page 1 of the document labeled Appendix C and J, there's a table on page 1 of that 6-page document. Table C 102.1, which basically outlines allowable areas and maximum heights for that. And there's several headings, 1, 2, 3, and 4 lumped together, and then 5 Roman numeral. So what are those various classifications of these sizes of ag exempt buildings?
Those are the type of construction. So type 1 is non-combustible materials. Type 2 is where the exterior structure is non-combustible, and then the interior stuff can be of any other thing approved in the code. As you go into type 4 is heavy timber. Type 5 is generally what we see here in Lake County, which is all like your home. It's built of all combustible construction. Usually we see it's usually called a VB. It's a type 5B. It's you can build it with anything in the code, even though it's combustible. And basically what they're saying is if you build something out of brick and steel, they're less concerned about getting occupants out before the place burns down, so they're going to give you a little bit more area in there.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I just want to highlight that based on the building material and the size of the building, although our current ordinance appears to only allow ag exempt buildings on parcels 10 acres and up, if you were to slice and dice a portion of this table and consider at some future point whether smaller buildings or certain types of building materials in smaller sizes could fit on smaller parcels, might be something worth looking at. I don't think we're at that point right now, but that type of flexibility was raised as potential. I think there probably is at least potential to consider that. I think, however, that 10-acre minimum got passed 10 years ago or so, whatever it was, it would allow for any of these type of ag exempt buildings to be considered for that parcel. But if there was a way to consider whether a subset of these allowed structures could fit on smaller parcels where ag isn't allowed use, that may be a flexibility we want to look at. So I just want to mention that as a gentle suggestion for future, and that's my only question.
Thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
The reason why there is a 10-acre minimum is because as the parcels get smaller, they're less likely to be used for primary agriculture. They become more like a ranchette, so it's primary residential use, in which case an ag exempt structure is inappropriate.
Supervisor Sabatier?
I know in submitting the request for the changes to the ag exempt, changes to dry sheds, and so on and so forth, that went through a whole process. I had offered, and it was moved to the task force to lower it to 5 acres. It came back to 10 acres. Obviously, many people got engaged in that conversation, and we approved it to not change and stay at the 10 acres. So we've already had some of these in-depth conversations, and it came back with the recommendation to keep it at 10. So I just wanted to at least provide that feedback that it's not the first time that that conversation has occurred, and that's, we remain where we are at this moment in time. So just wanted to add to that, but yeah, no, let's add these back in and make sure that we can move forward.
Okay, do we have any public comment? I'm not seeing anybody in the room, and I'm not seeing anyone in the Zoom room, so I'll bring it back to the board.
Just a quick follow-up. That discussion, was that a cannabis discussion or just a general discussion? Because I think the ordinance I was looking at dates back to 2013. So you're saying there are more recent conversations involving cannabis greenhouses or ag-exempt structures or ag-exempt structures generally?
So it was submitted to the task force and to the Ag Advisory for review, as it was originally about all ag, which ag includes cannabis. It came back to us as a cannabis hoop house ordinance, not an ag hoop house ordinance. And in the midst of it all, it also said no changes to ag exempt regulations. So it was reviewed and it did come back.
Thank you.
Okay, action?
Just one, I'm going to read a question from a constituent, Holly Harris. First, just two different references. One, in section 2 of the ordinance itself, all ordinances and resolutions in conflict herewith are hereby repealed to the extent of such conflict and no further. Then in number 2, it says, in the code itself, see Group U, agricultural buildings under user. And the note is about this appendix, agricultural buildings are given special consideration in Appendix C. Often such buildings have unique uses and structural needs where an agriculture building is surrounded by 60 feet of open area on all sides. Size limits are waived, automatic sprinkler protection may be required. The question is, does that mean that if a hoop house is surrounded by 60 feet on all sides, it could actually be 300 by 400 feet, which would be against the fire department's limit of 150 feet in the hoop house ordinance per the statement in section 2 of the ordinance? Long question. Just wanted to make sure I read it.
Well, I think that the ordinance that we passed before was a building, an ag exempt. We were allowing them to get an ag exempt for a hoop house without coming and getting a building permit. And we set out some guidelines of this would be the max we would allow on size. Even though we're adopting this, I don't believe that would change that. I think this is giving options to people that want to get a building permit for other things as well. And if they want their hoop house to be bigger, they can always get a hoop house permit from us, and we can assess it for code requirements, fire, getting a fire engine to it, EMS to it, things like that, access, how they're going to get in and out of the thing. In my interpretation, because I don't see any place in the code that says that these agricultural buildings to this size are necessarily permit-free or there's no permit for them. I think that's a determination made by the county. I think this is giving what an agricultural building could be and what we're thinking we would want to allow versus the California code just saying that because we adopted this appendix that you can have an agricultural building that's say 27 or 60,000 square feet without a permit. I think this is just another tool for us to assess agricultural buildings versus, because nowhere in here does this say that these are necessarily agricultural exempt up to that size of what I've read anyways.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, ready for action?
There's nothing further. Move to approve the first reading of the ordinance to be read in title only and advance the ordinance to the next Board of Supervisors meeting for adoption.
Supervisor, if I may,
Yes.
I would suggest just separating it into two separate motions. First motion to approve the first reading of the ordinance, as you said, to be read in title only.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So it's an ordinance amending Chapter 5 of the Lake County Code and adopting by reference Appendices C and J of the 2022 California Building Code, Part 2 of the California Code of regulations, Title 24.
Thank you.
There you go.
And move to advance the ordinance to the next Board of Supervisors meeting, which looks to be August 1st for final adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you both so much.